What's up, guys? Justin Coffin for the 330 Sports Show. Appreciate you tuning in. Make sure to give us a follow at 330 Sports Show, all the social media platforms, as well as Youngstown Studio. So let's get right into it. Yesterday, Greg Kirchner and I did a podcast, and we did our top 10 plays, basically since the Jim Tressel era. So going back to 2001, 2002 era. So I'm going to really quick go over those, and then we're going to bring Greg on and then our special guest on after that. So let's go over these top plays real quick. So first of all, we had the first Chip Trayanum touchdown at Notre Dame. We had the Braxton Miller spin cycle in Blacksburg. We went the JT Barrett comeback to Baugh to complete a 39-38 victory over Penn State. Tyvis Powell saves the 2-point conversion and the Buckeyes win in Ann Arbor, a 42-41 victory for the Buckeyes in Michigan. Braxton Miller to Smith. Hail Mary. Some might call it a Hail Mary. Some might call it a whatever. Throw it up for grabs, but they beat the Badgers in 2011. The Curtis Samuel walk-off, probably in everybody's top 5. The C. Grant Championship walk-off as well in the 2002 national title game. Number 3, this is kind of what triggered our conversation. Captain Jack Sawyer scoop and score against the Longhorns just last week. And then Holy Buckeye, the Purdue game in 2002. Who can forget that? And the Musburger Classic call. And then number 1, 85 yards through the heart of the South. I think that's a pretty solid list there. So we were pretty happy with that one. Greg, who was my co-host on that show, he was like, you know what, that play triggered a lot of great memories. Let's bring that back. So Greg comes back on the show, and I'm going to have Greg not only, give us a quick thought of that top 10 list, but also introduce our guest coming on. So Greg, the floor is to you.
Absolutely. And I think we have somebody backstage here that's pretty qualified to talk about a few of these plays. I do want to mention too, just as a reminder, we took the ground rule of choosing one, like no more than one play per game. There's definitely a few games that we could have picked a lot on, but didn't. So without further ado, we have a special guest here today at the 330 Sports Show. He was very instrumental in our number 2 play on the list, and Holy Buckeye. He was the front half of that play. In 2002, he helped lead the Buckeyes to a national title, a 14-0 record, 2 wins over that team up north, which is the state he hails from. He was the co-MVP of the 2002 season, academic All Big Ten, drafted in the 5th round by the Chicago Bears. And obviously played under both John Cooper and Jim Tressel. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Buckeye legend, Craig Krenzel.
Welcome to the show, Craig. We appreciate you coming on.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I'm going to let Greg lead off as he just introed you. So Greg, why don't you tee this one up for Craig here?
Yeah, so you saw the list we had come up with, and it was really hard. So we kind of like independently came up with our own lists and kind of mashed them together, and there was a lot of variability. Obviously, the 2002 season, prominent, and we were actually in school really at the same time as you were. So near and dear to our hearts as fans. Curious leading off, like your initial thoughts. I mean, some of the memorable plays in your time as a player, if you want to maybe go through some. I'm sure it's a lot that are on our list. I'm sure there maybe are some that we missed that that are important to you.
Yeah, no question. So these lists are always fun, for me to see, because you can talk to different fans, and they're all going to have, there's going to be maybe 3 or 4 of those plays that are going to be on everybody's list over the last 20 plus years. But they're all going to have kind of variations and different ones. For me, it's always fun to look at. Are you looking at lists? Are you looking at a list that's like one of the greatest plays? You look at, for example, some of the catches that Jeremiah's made this year. but maybe they didn't happen in a game where the magnitude was quite as large. And that's where I think a lot of people have fun. For me during my playing time, some of the top plays that stand out for me are my first start in Ann Arbor, 4th and short, right around the 50-yard line. And Jonathan Wells busts one, whatever yards for a touchdown, not just getting the conversion, but a crucial touchdown in that game, which would lead to our first win in Ann Arbor. And I think it was 14 years at that point. So just to be a part of that experience and to just kind of hand the ball off and watch that play was awesome. And then fast forward a year later, 2002, obviously a game with or a season rather with a lot of close games and a ton of huge plays. And you guys referenced Holy Buckeye there, but some other plays that stand out for me, Penn State, Chris Gamble, pick 6, third quarter, kind of a slow offensive game on both sides of the ball. We moved the ball early in the game. And had the ball down. I to this day, I think I scored on a quarterback sneak, reached the ball over, but we didn't have replay. They called it a fumble. And I forget which one of their linebackers picked it up, returned it, and had probably a 15, 18-yard head start. And Chris actually was the one that hawked him down from behind and a touchdown-saving tackle. But, later that game, he would get the pick 6. And I always tell people that is as loud as I have ever heard the shoe. That place on that play was incredible. And I remember standing on the sideline when he picked it off. I wasn't too far away and, putting my helmet on, excited. We're going to get the offense. We're going to get the ball and get back on the field. And the next thing I know, he's running past us. And then I'm kind of walking down, getting ready. I'm still buckling my helmet because, there were Penn State guys everywhere. And just when you really watch that play and watch all the in and out and the dancing and making people miss, he was truly one of the most talented guys athletically that I've ever seen. Just a freak of a player, great dude, hard worker, just whatever it takes to win. But that play was just the perfect definition of individual effort and not giving up. And it was remarkable. So, another play that kind of stands out, individual effort wise, I was on the this one might sound funny that it's one of my top plays of that season, but in the national championship game, I threw a ball into the end zone, and for the longest time, I thought I just threw a touchdown pass to Ben Hartsock, only to have the late Sean Taylor come out of nowhere, the freak player that he was, pick it off and start taking it back, and I started chasing him down, and you can see it in the corner of the replay. If targeting existed back then, Vince Wolford would have been thrown out of the game 10 times over because I got laid sideways in the air. And I got off the ground to find out that we have the football back, because Reese stripped it and, got the ball back. We were able to go convert the field goal there, which was obviously key and pivotal in that game. And then, 4th and 14 to Michael Jenkins there in overtime, a huge conversion. I was excited for Emeka Egbuka the other day when they announced that he took over the career receiving yards, but I was a little upset because I always love to tell people how if you want to know how good Michael Jenkins was, he held the record for most receiving yards for the longest time, 22 years until this season, in an offense that didn't throw the football.
Mm-hmm.
That's how productive, that's how dependable he was. Just a phenomenal teammate, phenomenal dude, phenomenal player. And, the ability to get him the ball on 4th and long there, that was I think a key mistake that Miami made was leaving him singled up in that moment.
Yeah, definitely. So Craig, you had mentioned, some place we might not think of, just the handoff to Jonathan Wells. And you're, correct me if I'm wrong, you're from Michigan, or you grew up in Michigan. Is that correct? Yeah,
I grew up in Sterling Heights, Michigan, about 45, 50 minutes from Ann Arbor, hour north of Detroit. So that was an awesome game. That was my first start. A lot of my family there, my high school coach, friends that went to U of M, some friends that didn't, but, found a way to get tickets to the game. Just a really cool experience to, in front of all of our family, or in front of all of our fans, of which a lot of it were my family, and coaches, sing Carmen, Ohio, getting that first dub up in Ann Arbor in over a decade. That's a day that I hope my brain works long enough that I never forget.
That's great.
You mentioned that gamble play, and I'll just add as a quick aside, because rewatching some of these plays as we were preparing for this pod, I noticed it immediately as soon as I popped the video on. Like just the sound in the shoe even before the pick, it was so loud already. And yeah, I would echo your thought. I know I was at that game. This was back in college. I don't remember how loud it was, but man, when you rewatch that video, it was so loud.
It interrupted.
My last point, because we have the Braxton Miller. This is another play that I'd completely forgotten. So we have the Braxton Miller spin cycle play on the list, but you had a spin cycle play of your own against Cincinnati in the left side of the end zone there.
Please don't show it. It looks nothing like Braxton.
We're not going to show it, but I was going to say, who did it better, Braxton or Craig?
I think anybody in their right mind knows the answer to that.
And Greg had pointed out, I didn't even think about this, but and I'm sure you've heard Holy Buckeye a million times over, just around Columbus. But I had forgotten, lost the time, that game was 6-3 at the time. Like in today's college football game, college football world, 6-3. It's like, well, how 9 points total.
Like watching grass grow.
Exactly. But hey, a different time.
And a lot of people don't. You want to talk about another key play? A lot of people don't even remember at the end of the first half, we were driving the football, and the idiot that I was, I thought I could step up and get a first down, and maybe even buy a little time to throw a ball into the end zone at the end of the first half to get a touchdown. And we didn't have any timeouts. And I ended up getting tripped up and getting tackled. No first down, no clock stop. But the way our field goal unit and special teams and everybody was prepped, the Purdue guys were laying on top of me, trying not to let me get up and get off the field. And I was, pushing them off, trying to sprint off the field just so we could get the field goal unit on for Nuge to kick a field goal. That's the only reason we had the 3 points there to begin with. Obviously, toward the end there, getting the touchdown, still, whether it's 10-6 or, 7-6, it wouldn't have mattered. A win's a win at that point. But I remember sitting on the bench after Mike caught the touchdown and kicked the extra point, and just kind of like looking around, just thinking to myself, all right, let's get the heck out of here. No more crazy plays. We're gonna escape with one here. Let's get on a plane and get back to Columbus, please.
That's great. Well, in your stories, you've obviously mentioned Maurice Clarett, and you played under. You were recruited by John Cooper. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Recruited by Coach Coop. Played for him for 2 years, and then last 3 years were Coach Tressel's first 3 years.
Absolutely. So this being a Youngstown-based podcast, I'm recording from home. Normally we're downtown at the studio, but this being a Youngstown podcast, we got to ask you a little bit about, Coach Tressel, playing with Maurice Clarett, and some stories or any, good stuff you want to share with us there. So why don't we start with Coach Tressel and what it was like playing with him?
Yeah, Coach, everyone always asks about Coach Tress, and the answer is simple. He's exactly what you'd think he is. Very calculated, very even-keeled, very, very detail-oriented. Maybe as a coach, a bit of on the offensive side especially, a bit of a micromanager, but, that was his side. And I think you see a lot of head coaches come up, whether they're an offensive guy or a defensive guy, they tend to have their hand in and meddle that side of the ball, even when they're the head coach and they have their coordinators. So very hands-on, very involved, a little bit of the opposite of Coach Coop. Coach Coop had a lot of success being a phenomenal recruiter. To this day, I'm forever grateful to Coach Coop and his staff and everybody for bringing me down from Michigan and giving me the opportunity to be a Buckeye and really enjoyed playing for Coach Coop. And it was, fun just to kind of see two different leadership styles. Like I said, Coach Treff's definitely more hands-on. And from day one, you saw it at the shot. And, from the very first training camp practice that we had, everything was about the game. Everything was about the team up north. Because, back then, as I like to say in the good old days, we had 3 goals: beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, and win a national title. And you had to accomplish them in that order back then. It wasn't like this year where you can slip up and get away with it. You got a 12-team playoff or even a 4-team playoff.
Sure.
We had to win. We had to beat Michigan. You had to win the conference if you wanted to have a chance to win a national title. So everything was about that game and geared toward that from day one. I think that was the biggest difference between Coach Tress and Coach Coop, was just kind of how hands-on Coach Tress was.
Interesting. Very good.
I was thinking about this too the other day. It was like, good thing the transfer portal wasn't what it was back then, because, if you have and nowadays you have a coaching change like that, 50 guys hit the portal, right? And the whole team and Tress comes in, has to rebuild the whole team. So I'm sure there was some uneasiness like on your part when he came on board. I'm going to guess, did you know who he was at all? Maybe besides just his name.
I knew the name and knew where he was coming from. But yeah, Greg, you're right. You're going to tell me at a place like Ohio State, it's so funny to say this now, but they're gonna bring in a guy that hardly anyone's heard his name.
Mm-hmm.
Right. He's coming from a small program, obviously a tremendous amount of success, but coming from a small program. So, in today's culture, you probably would have seen a lot of guys peace out, hit the portal. I'm going to transfer somewhere else, bigger names, bigger coaches, top programs. But fortunately for us, we didn't have that back then. And, the other really interesting thing about it too is the ingredients to build a successful organization, whether you're at Youngstown State or Ohio State, or whether you're starting or running a small business or the CEO of Apple. Those ingredients to build a successful culture, to build a great culture rather that will lead to a lot of success for an organization. I've had a lot of fun opportunities to see a lot of different programs, organizations from the inside, from the outside. And I've learned that those ingredients don't really change, so that's a kind of a lesson that I look back and now, what Coach Tress was able to do previously to come into Ohio State, that program, the steps that you take to build a powerhouse organization, you can replicate them at different levels. And, I think it's awesome that he got the opportunity to do that. And I'm just blessed that I was at the right point at the right time. And most importantly, with the right group of guys. You talk about the transfer portal. I'd like to think that our crew wouldn't have left. I was just blessed enough to play with some of the toughest dudes I've ever met in my entire life, mentally, physically, emotionally, just selfless, tough dudes. And forever have those memories because of that group of guys.
So that's great. I got kind of, this is kind of a good segue into, obviously the team that was there when Tress got there, and this freshman running back that shows up on campus, Mr. Football in Ohio, Maurice Clarett, who when you look at the current team, which we're going to obviously talk about here pretty soon, and you see what Jeremiah Smith is doing week in and week out, and how this guy showed up. And he was like a man among men day one. Like, I don't think I've ever seen an 18-year-old kid looks quite like he does. But it brings you back to reminds you a little bit of Maurice coming in and being able to play at an incredibly high level from day one. When did you know that this dude was built a little bit different than your normal freshman to show up on campus?
Well, depends on how you mean built a little bit different. If you mean just physically built a little different, the first time I saw him, like you just said, this dude walked into the indoor and we're just having a 7-on-7 when he got there early, and he comes walking out of the locker room onto the indoor, and I couldn't tell who it was. I knew I hadn't seen him before, and my first thought was like, who's this linebacker? I mean, just physically, just obviously everybody remembers. Just physically, just an impressive dude. I mean, just looked the part, played the part, and that was the first time I'd ever met him, and the first time I had ever seen him, and just physically, you're like, wow, this kid's this kid should still be a senior in high school. And it's funny because nowadays I think we see that a lot more, right? We see freshmen coming out of high school that are just so much more mature physically than we were back then. So Reese was kind of ahead of his time, from a physical standpoint. But what a lot of people don't know is where he really excelled and where he was, really ahead of his time. And it sounds kind of funny to say it this way, but he was incredibly mature. Now, when I say that, I mean football mature. I mean, he was like, his knowledge of the game and the way he came in and learned the offense, what his role was on every play, even when he wasn't getting the ball. People always ask, what was it like having Reese as a teammate? And I tell everybody, Maurice Clarett was no different than any other teammate. He was one of the best teammates that we had. I mean, he was selfless. He was hardworking. He was where he needed to be when he needed to be there that year. There was never a doubt in my mind if I was dropping back and, a linebacker was coming off the edge or coming through the B gap, and that was his guy. Never a doubt that Reese was going to get the job done blocking. But what really set him apart was just his patience and his vision. I mean, I remember I used to hand the ball off, and, we'd be running play side power, and, the backside linebacker, middle linebacker would over pursue. There'd be a cutback. I would kind of have a little more vision, a little wider field of vision. Back, he's getting up to the line of scrimmage, and, it was almost like playing a video game where I'd see the hole and I'd be thinking to myself, oh, cut back. And as I'm starting to even think it, boom, he's gone. He's out the backside for 25 yards, where he may have been stuffed up for a plus or minus 1 yard at the line of scrimmage had he played side him. And his vision, his patience was next level. I mean, it was next level from a maturity standpoint. I like to look at Reese this way. Nobody is ever going to say Archie who. Had Reese been able to stay on the field and keep it together, there is zero doubt in my mind every single Buckeye fan would be saying Archie and. Because Maurice Clarett was that good. And I firmly believe, our offensive line did a phenomenal job my senior year. And the vision is what we missed in the backfield, from some of our backs that just, Reese was gifted. Had we had Reese my senior year, there's zero doubt in my mind we're at the very least playing for another national title.
That's awesome.
But unfortunately, we didn't.
Yeah, but no one can ever take away 2002, which is the best thing about, like you said, it was just the perfect timing. Tressel getting there, you getting there. Taking over the quarterback role, Clarett coming in for that unbelievable freshman year. And everything that had to go right that 2002 season. So I don't want to rehash the whole season, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, you just talk about those handful of names right there. But when you look at, a lot of people like to look at that team, and they talk about our defense. Obviously, they talk about how talented that defense was, and in my opinion, one of, if not the best defenses in the history of Ohio State football, and the guys that played in the NFL. But even offensively, we had guys. Ben Hartsock, our tight end, played 10 years in the NFL. Tim Anderson on the defensive line. It wasn't Will Smith. But Timmy Anderson played 5-6 years in the National Football League, and when you go across the entire roster and the guys that played, tremendous amount of talent, tremendous amount of work ethic and toughness, and then Then you factor in the emergence of Mike Nugent getting that chance to be one of the best kickers in Ohio State history. Out of nowhere, you get a walk-on and Andy Groom coming out and having one of the best years punting, as a Buckeye punter. And when you add it all up and the way it just put together, I mean, it was truly magical, truly a blessing, and just glad that God had me in the right place at the right time.
And somewhere Coach Tressel is smiling right now that you mentioned the punter on that 2002 team. So that's for sure.
Is Andy, right?
So Craig, there's a lot of parallels from that 2002 team. And this is going to sound weird to say, but I feel like there's a lot of parallels with that 2002 team and this Notre Dame team Ohio State's about to play. And I kind of want to shift gears a little bit and just kind of get your thoughts on this game that's coming up. And, we can dive into more of the minutia and stuff in a little bit, but like just your overall thoughts of, obviously you said it, like back then, this team, this Ohio State team, this Notre Dame team wouldn't be playing for the national title. So, the shifting landscape has given these two teams an opportunity to get here. But like just your overall, basic thoughts on this game, and then maybe we'll hit you with a few more in like detailed questions here.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you bring that up, because I've been telling people all week I'm a little uncomfortable about this game. And the reason why is on paper, there's no question. On paper, we should win by 3 scores. Notre Dame is, I mean, to my knowledge, almost, if not exclusively, man on defense. How are you going to pull that off? How are you going to try to cover our 3 receivers and our backs out of the backfield and, tight end? Like, we have weapons everywhere, much like Miami did back in 2002. Defensively, our guys up front do a tremendous job of getting pressure. And when you look at Notre Dame, their offense doesn't scare you. They don't necessarily come at you with weapons that scare you, scheme that scares you. But at the same time, it's interesting, Justin, that you brought it up, but I look at this Notre Dame Freeman and I look at the culture that Marcus Freeman is building. And I look at this Notre Dame team and I get a little uncomfortable because, like, you watch those guys play, they love playing for each other. They love competing. You can tell they take pride in winning the sudden change. If the offense turns over the ball, the defense getting a stop or vice versa. You can tell they take a lot of pride in supporting each other. And that's Marcus Freeman, right? That's him in a nutshell. That's the person he is, the coach that he played for. Great dude. And he values and cherishes those attributes. And there's something about a team that is selfless and truly loves playing for each other and loves each other. That's tough to beat. There's an intrinsic value that goes beyond X's and O's, that goes beyond matchups. Because let's face it, like I just said, if you're looking at matchups, if you're looking at on paper, it shouldn't be a game. I know what it's like to be in the locker room, to be the team that everybody thinks that about. And I can promise you this, there's nobody in that Notre Dame locker room thinking that. There's nobody in that Notre Dame locker room thinking that Ohio State is unbeatable. I think everybody that knows college football this year would look and say, yeah, Ohio State, especially the way they've played in this playoff once they open things up and early downs, spreading the ball around and getting it downfield to the receivers, getting it to the backs out of the backfield, getting in a lot of, second and short, favorable playmaking downs and distances, coupled with what our defense does. There's no question we are and have been the scariest team in this playoff. But I guarantee you Notre Dame's not scared. Those guys are every day bringing their lunch pail, prepping, watching tape, practicing putting a game plan together to figure out how they're going to slow that Buckeye offense down and our trio of receivers and what that's going to look like. So, I expect some wrinkles. And at the end of the day, there's no doubt in my mind, I expect a 4-quarter battle from a Notre Dame team that's maybe going to be undermanned a little bit, but not going to quit.
Yeah. And I'd imagine, Craig, that's probably a pretty big focus on the Ohio State side right now, is knowing obviously there's nobody's underestimating anybody or anything like that, but understanding that you are going to be facing an incredibly hungry, aggressive team that is coming out with a pretty giant chip on their shoulder, and just to be the challenge of being able to match that hunger. And that hunger is almost like hunger that can only really come from an underdog, right? So being like the favorite, how do you match that the intensity and the ferociousness of an 8-point underdog that is coming out to shock the world?
Yeah, I mean, I think that falls on coaches, right? It falls on the coaches and it falls on your upperclassmen leadership. I think a lot of it just depends on the maturity of the team. Personally, I never prepared any harder or any less, no matter who we were playing. If we were playing an Indiana or Northwestern or even a non-conference, MAC team early in the season, I always prepared the same way. I just measured success differently, right? When we would play one of those teams, if the starters weren't out of the game in the second quarter, with some of the second team guys getting reps before the half, then we didn't execute. We failed. Sure. If we weren't done for the game by the middle end of the third quarter, then we hadn't done our job. Or if it's going to be an overtime, battle, or a fourth quarter, win at Camp Randall, or, at home against Michigan. I personally always prepared the same way, approached every game the same way, underdog, favored, none of that ever mattered to me. So, I think a lot of that comes down to the maturity of the upperclassmen leadership. And then, Coach Day and this staff, there's still a lot of questions to answer after that Michigan loss and the inability to beat the team up north for 4 straight years. And, the only thing in my mind that salvages that, or at least kind of gets that taste out of your mouth, is bringing home the national championship trophy. And anything short of the Natty is going to, this season will be a disappointment, right? So didn't beat Michigan, didn't win the conference, didn't win a national title. 3 goals of Ohio State football, and they will have accomplished 0 of them. So, there's a lot of hunger that can come from that. And at least that's what I hope they're talking about and feeling, because as funny as it sounds, you're playing in a national championship game, but in today's era with the playoff, that's not as big of a deal. I don't want to say they haven't earned it, but they definitely didn't earn it in the regular season. And I hope they feel like they have a lot to prove in this game, and that'll help them match that hunger.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a great answer.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, real quick, because you had mentioned Coach Freeman. I don't believe you guys were there on campus at the same time. I know he played under Coach Tressel, but have you guys crossed paths? Have you guys ever spoken or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, a handful of times.
Okay.
I've gotten to talk to Marcus and share some conversations, but nothing, kind of more in passing at a Buckeye event. But obviously I know a lot of guys that know him well. And, everything that you see about him, everything that you think about him, from what limited interactions I've had with him, but conversations I've had with guys that do know him well, he's exactly what you think. I mean, great guy, family man, all about doing it the right way and trying to first and foremost, develop, late stage teenagers and young men, teaching them what it really means to be successful in life and what it really means to be a successful man as you grow up. Those are the types of lessons that he's going to cherish the most. And that's when you can instill that culture in a football program, it can be dangerous.
Greg?
Absolutely. Yeah, I guess, I'd probably be remiss if we didn't talk about your counterpart on the current Ohio State quarterback, Will Howard. And, this guy, in my view, has done everything that we could have asked of him and more, from a leadership standpoint and an on-field performance standpoint, and yet doesn't really seem to get much recognition. And he's kind of become the Rodney Dangerfield of college football right now. It just seems like everybody in the national media likes to talk about how maybe our quarterback doesn't quite measure up to the other quarterbacks that are left, yet Will continues to perform at a high level. What's your take on what you see out of Will Howard, both from a leadership standpoint and just a football standpoint?
Well, I think the best part from what I've seen, the way he conducts himself, the way he handles interviews, I think the best part about Will Howard is everything you just talked about. He doesn't care, right? He's here to do one thing and one thing only. And, production speaks volumes. I tripped over myself, where I should have scored a touchdown. I don't care. We still scored a touchdown. We still won the game. And we're still going to bring home a national title. So, I think the humility, as a quarterback in a position of leadership, in any position of leadership for that matter, that humility goes a long way. And I think he's had a tremendous season. I think he's really developed along with the progression of our offense, in accepting and excelling and executing at the expanded role that he's had, especially here in the playoff. But even during the regular season, when we asked him to throw the ball a little more, I think he's been incredibly efficient. He's made some big time throws, some absolutely big time throws, and some big time moments. And what I love about watching him play, and you saw a little bit of it, like physically, we actually got to see it with that giant lump on his hand. But he's a tough dude. He can throw the ball downfield. He's getting the ball to our weapons. But he's just he's a tough dude back there. And in my opinion, at that position, you got to have a dude that can run the offense. You got to have a guy that can spread the football around, but you got to be mentally tough and you got to be physically tough. And I think in my opinion, I think he has aced the toughness challenge in terms of mental toughness, physical toughness, being prepared to play, and just not caring about what anybody's saying. Once again, if you're outside of that locker room, players don't care what you're saying. They don't care what we're saying. They don't care what ESPN's saying. They don't care what their parents are saying. They don't care what people are saying at work as they're living in Columbus, Ohio, cheering the Buckeyes on. We love our fans. We love the support. We're very grateful of it. But at the same time, we don't care what you think. And, I think he embodies that really well.
I'm glad you brought that point up right there because Greg and I were talking about this yesterday. Us obviously not being inside that locker room ever, but you had, you're the leader of that 2002 team. You didn't have to experience that loss in 2002 going on to the postseason. But I think Greg said it was 40 some odd days ago. You lose your biggest game of the year. You lose to that team up north again, but you go into the playoff. What's the mindset of that locker room, or how do you rally back on December 1st after that loss on November 30th? What do you do?
Greg's gonna laugh at this. I personally did it all the way back then, the same way I do it now, which is the same way I coached Greg's son Coley in baseball, which is, what's the most important play? What's the most important pitch? What's the most important play? What's the most important game? And the answer is always the next game, the next play, the next pitch. And I know it's kind of cliche, but at the same time, if you're an athlete and you can't live by that mantra, then you would have never made it to a place like Ohio State in the first place. Mm-hmm. I think it's kind of a simple answer. But you wake up that next day and it's, all right, who do we play? Let's get to work. What's that going to look like? And, obviously they wake up the next day, they don't know who they play. You got to wait for the Big Ten championship. You got to wait for Selection Sunday. You got to wait a week. Probably a little downtime, probably a little physical recovery, but just ready to get back to work, ready to, regardless of whether you win the last game or lose the last game, the next one's, more important because it's the only one that you can actually control. So, we dealt with that my senior year. We went up to Ann Arbor, lost 35-21, couldn't get the job done. That was a game. Had we beat Michigan in Ann Arbor in 2003, we would have been headed back to another BCS national title game. And, that sucked. But at the same time, it was the culmination of a regular season that marked, the final regular season game that I was ever going to play in the scarlet and gray. And I just remember, taking the opportunity to kind of cherish that moment with the guys that I battled with for the last couple of years. And, remember it in that light instead of remembering it as a loss that spoiled the season.
I love it. That's great advice for, like you said, for, Coley on the baseball field, or just like, Jeremiah Smith, moving on to Notre Dame on Monday night. So
yeah, it's a little bit hard, I think, for fans or people that haven't been in that moment or haven't been to that level, because we tend to think that there's this amplification because it's Ohio State and it's all over TV, and now these guys are making millions of dollars and everything that comes with major Division I college football. But at the same time, these guys are just a bunch of 20-year-olds playing a game that they love and having fun. And it's still just a game. So, in that moment when you face defeat, it sucks. I hate to lose, can't stand it. But I can tell you there's far worse things to have to deal with in life than losing a game, regardless of what level it is, regardless if it's youth sports, middle school, high school, college, the NFL. It's at the end of the day, it's for me, football was always something that I did. It was never who I was, and I think that helped me personally, rebound from those gut wrenching moments of defeat and despair where you're just sick to your stomach, and then you wake up the next day and the sun still comes up and Jesus still loves you, your parents still love you, the fans might not. But, they're the only ones that don't. Your teammates still love you. Coaches still love you. And you realize quickly that, on the scale of priorities, it's still just a game. I
love it. That's such great advice. Just literally for anyone watching this podcast, for anybody out there, great advice. Just move on, take it the next day at a time. Love it. So simple, but so powerful. All right, let's Greg. Let's hit Craig here with some rapid fire, and then we'll unless you got any.
Is this like multiple? Is this like multiple choice? I mean, they're like right.
This is.
You got. Do I need to be nervous?
No, absolutely not. We're gonna ask 10 questions. We're gonna alternate. We're gonna be quick. If you want to expound on them, fine. But just fun, quick questions that are kind of like, hey, we got Craig Krenzel here. Let's ask some, most of them are football related. A few of them aren't, but it's just, I think good questions that hopefully, listeners will enjoy hearing your answers on. So,
all right.
If you're ready, we're going to let it rip.
All right.
Fire away.
All right. First question. It's a two-parter though. Favorite Big Ten stadium, least favorite Big Ten stadium outside of Ohio State excluded.
Favorite Big Ten stadium, Camp Randall. I mean, Camp Randall, everybody talks about it's a tough place to play and House of Pain, jump around, at the start of the fourth quarter. But what people don't realize is as the visiting team, you feed on that too. Like you feed on that energy, and it was loud, but it wasn't terribly loud. So to me, Camp Randall was an incredibly fun atmosphere to play in. Noise wise, not incredibly difficult, but just an awesome just an absolutely awesome environment to play. Least favorite, probably a toss-up between the Big House. If you ever been to a game there, it's stale. Mm-hmm. It's just this giant satellite dish. All the noise just escapes up into the atmosphere. It's just Michigan. It sucks. And then kind of right there with it is Penn State. Awesome stadium, loud, fun environment. But that damn cat is the most annoying thing. And it's nonstop. It's absolutely nonstop. And, I guess right there behind it would be like the little choo-choo train boiler up if you got to go to West Lafayette too. That thing is annoying.
Well, it's cool because guess what? You're never welcome back in West Lafayette anyway, so you're fine.
Greg, yours.
Yeah, next one. So this is gonna be a tough one, but obviously you threw some great receivers when you were there, but we've had a embarrassment of riches at the wide receiver position. So who's one receiver that you didn't play with that you would have loved to have thrown to?
Oh, I know I might be feeling the recency bias, but I there's just something about Jeremiah that's just special. I mean, he is an absolute freak. Some of the things that he does are just, he's just a treat to watch. And I think as a quarterback, the increased margin of error that you have with a guy like that, I was blessed to throw to Chris Gamble, Michael Jenkins, Drew Carter. My senior year after Drew tore his ACL, just this little guy out of nowhere named Santonio Holmes stepped up for the second half of the season. Blessed to throw to some phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal wide receivers. But there's something about this kid that's just special. And I feel like it's like the cheap answer just because it's now and it's right in front of me, but man, is he special.
I think that's good.
I don't think anybody's gonna fight you on that answer. So yeah.
I'm gonna let you define this however you want, but biggest football guy, quote unquote, you've ever been around.
Oh, man, that's a tough one. That's a really tough question because I ever since I've stopped playing, I'm not around like a ton of football guys.
Like Schlegel was the first one that came to my mind, but I don't know how much you've been around.
Schlegs is like, yeah, he's a football guy, but he's more interested in like jumping out of a tree and, going, wild boar hunting with nothing but a knife and his dogs. Man, that's you got me stumped here. Biggest football guy. I really don't have an answer to that. I'm sorry.
It's all good.
A lot of the people that are in my kind of inner circle and stuff, they're not diehard. Absolute got to be on the couch. Diehard football guys.
No, that's good. That's good. All right, Greg.
All right, so this is a good one. So, because you touched on a lot of the guys already, but who is somebody from the 2002 team that we just don't talk about enough? An unsung guy that just, we've maybe forgotten over the years and just doesn't get enough credit for what he brought to that team.
Tim Anderson would be one of them. I think a three technique defensive tackle that just absolutely demands a double team. And can handle a double team and take it on, play in, play out, week in, week out, freeing up our linebackers to make plays. Guys like that are, Ben Hartsock is a name you heard me mention earlier. On our offense, we didn't throw the football all the time to begin with, let alone made the play. And week in and week out, what he did at the line of scrimmage, was, he was like an extended tackle that could also run and catch. And in our offense, you can't put a price tag on that. But I think that's another position that, a lot of people aren't going to really, they're not going to gravitate toward as somebody that they want to talk about all the time on the O2, national title football team.
That's a great answer. All right. Here's one from an opposing perspective. Who is the best player you've ever gone against? And you had a stint in the NFL as well. But it could be college, pro, even high school. Who is the best player you've ever gone against?
Gone against in a game?
In a game.
In a game, yeah.
Or in a game.
In a game.
I would say probably Sean Taylor or Michael Strahan would be two guys that you look at those guys and you're like, wow, that's a whole other level of different what they're capable of.
Did Strahan sack you in a game or no?
No, but he put me to the ground pretty violently after I completed a screen pass. And I had a hairline fracture in a rib for a few weeks after, probably one of the more painful football injuries I've ever had to deal with.
Oh, Greg, that might lead into your next.
I was going to say, this is a perfect segue. I thought the answer might have been what you mentioned earlier with Wilfork, but what's the hardest you've ever been hit?
That one would be up there. But there was another play in that game, and I literally just got done singing Ben Hartsock's praises. And I threw a ball up the left sideline, and it just kind of fluttered to Michael Jenkins because I was just getting a helmet right to my sternum from Jonathan Vilma. We were in a gap protection. All Ben was supposed to do was step to his left and take the C gap. For some reason, he stepped out, and I don't know why. He doesn't know why. He apologized. But I was, right here throwing and just straight to the chest. I mean, just one of those where I was on the ground, like, couldn't breathe. And then the one that I just talked about too with Strahan, he got me pretty good on that one.
And that was before they put all those nice little, body weight rules and, all the hit rules that are, obviously have made life as a quarterback a little bit easier from that standpoint.
You mean back when we were when we were allowed to play real football? Yeah, good old days.
Exactly. Well, I mean, shoot, obviously, if you remember in the title game, I mean, rewatching some of that again, it was like, holy shit! Like Ken Dorsey was. I don't know where he thought he was maybe on those last couple of plays, but that dude got concussed.
Yeah,
they
say he spent the night. They say he spent the night, or at least a portion of that night, in the hospital after that game. I mean, our guys, they were not ready for what that defensive front was capable of. Just truly, nobody realized until that game just how good those guys were.
Yeah, that front was so good. All right, next one. Any coach at any level, current, former, high school, college, pro, that you could have played for that you would have loved to have played for?
Oh, somebody that I didn't?
Somebody that you did not.
Like, who would you have wanted to play for?
Yeah, who would you have liked the opportunity to play for?
Yeah, it's kind of a funny answer. Looking back, Nick Saban recruited me when he was at Michigan State. And Pat Shurmur was their tight ends coach. He was in charge of recruiting my area, the state of Michigan. And there was just something about, first of all, it's Michigan State. So there's not a whole lot whole lot of appeal to East Lansing. Just the town, the pro, if you're a guy that can go to Michigan or Ohio State, you're not really thinking about Michigan State. But there was something about Coach Saban that just I didn't like. And the older that I've gotten, as I look back, and not just because of the success that he's had, but because had I gone to play for Nick Saban, first of all, it would have only been for maybe a year or two, so it wouldn't have mattered. But as I look back now, I'm fairly confident that he stands for everything that I stand for, that he is the kind of coach that I would love to play for, even though, I didn't think that in the moment when I was a 16-year-old kid when I committed to Ohio State.
Good answer.
Very interesting. All right. So this may be hopefully a little easier one for you. We'll give you a break. Favorite non-football sporting event
that I've ever been to?
That you like it,
or just
whether it's an annual,
to.
what do you enjoy? Like, not necessarily that you've been to, like an annual event, like March Madness or whatever. Like, what's your favorite, annual sporting event that's not football related, or it doesn't even have to be annual? But,
I would say either the Masters or like Major League Baseball playoffs.
Yeah,
162 games are done. Every game matters now. You see a different energy out of those guys, and Greg knows me pretty well, and he knows that I'm actually more of a baseball guy now than I am a football guy in terms of like sitting down and wanting to watch something on TV. So I would either say the Masters, in the springtime, or October baseball.
Very good.
Those are, you can't do much better than those answers.
All right, Craig, here, last one from me. And this one's tough. Your most cherished piece of memorabilia from your playing days, if you even have any.
Like aside from my helmet and jerseys,
just
anything. Those don't count.
Anything. Like I think I heard you say on the radio back before the Michigan game. I think your gold pants you've given away, right? Or with family, right?
Yes, my mom has a pair, and my wife has a pair. So Beth's got a pair, and then my mom has a pair. It's really cool to have the jerseys that I wore in some of those games. It's cool to have my helmet. That actually I'm not even sure I'm supposed to have, but I made damn sure that I was going to get it. But I also have this cool framed picture that somebody gave to me, and it's a picture of the captains walking out to midfield holding hands at the national title game. And that's a picture that I got in a silver frame, and just it means a lot to me because the guys that were in that picture, the guys that I played with in that game, it's a cool memory that I'll cherish forever.
Good answer.
Awesome. Last one. Who do you like in the Super Bowl this year?
Oh man. Well, apparently the media, Hollywood, ESPN, and everybody else involved in professional football just does not want to see the Chiefs lose. So I think it's hard to go against the Chiefs, especially if they continue to get the calls. I'm not a conspiracy guy per se, but at the same time, I do know a lot about football, and I do have a lot of questions. I hate to say it, but I think it's hard to go against them right now.
Yeah.
Okay. I was wondering, from being from Michigan, if you grew up like a Lions fan or anything like that.
I was a Barry Sanders fan.
Okay.
That was when I was growing up there, that was was about all we had to be proud of. I think Herman Moore and Brett Perryman had a couple of solid years. When I was a little younger, you had Spiels and William White. But the Lions as a whole were a little less they left a little bit to be desired, I suppose. We were a hockey town. That is for sure.
Oh, we're Greg and I can relate. We're Browns fans, so we're mostly Guardians and Cavs fans these days. So,
but I tell you what, I do love the culture in Detroit right now. So if I had to pick somebody to dethrone the chosen ones, the Lions are up there. I mean, he's tough and scrappy. They're tough and scrappy. They got players. They got a good thing going on up there too right now.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah,
so
it should definitely be a fun, the wild card round was a little lopsided, but I feel like now we got the cream, and the cream is risen.
Yeah, once you get, to me, the playoffs don't start till you get to the divisional round.
Yeah.
So, now's when the fun really starts to happen.
Absolutely.
So we've berated you with questions over the last hour, and I appreciate your time because we told you about 20 minutes, and that's how this usually goes. So,
Beth, Greg knows. Beth will be the first to tell you. You get me to start talking, especially about the glory days, right? That's all of us.
Oh, we appreciate it. It's
been awesome.
Because I'll tell you one thing too, and I don't know if you can see the banner on the bottom of the screen, but your backup quarterback, Scotty Mack, we lived about 3 houses down from him on West Patterson. So we would attend a few parties at his place post victory Saturdays here and there. So.
I tell you what, I am just forever grateful and blessed that Scotty wasn't half the quarterback as he was a partier, because if he was, I'd have never seen the field.
Oh, so good. So good. Those were our glory days too. So it was shared memory.
I love
more so on the
every
field.
time. I'll see Scotty around town from time to time, and it's some things never change. He just every room he walks into, he just lights it up, and every time I see him, I remember all the laughs. I mean, can you imagine being in a QB room with him every day? We had so much fun. It was an absolute blast. I don't miss playing the game of football. That's the stuff I miss. I miss the locker room. I miss the weight room. The meeting rooms. That's where the real memories and the real fun is had, and I do miss a lot of that. That's
awesome. That's great. So let's just shift and let's kind of get our final thoughts here on. Let's actually talk about what your keys to victory are in this national championship game. Obviously, we've talked a little bit about the teams, but what's your keys to victory in this game?
Yeah, I think what we talked about earlier in terms of the kind of the environment and the culture that's being built at Notre Dame. I think the first thing and one of the most important things that we have to do is we got to start fast. One of the things that we were kind of a second half team all year, make our adjustments at halftime. The last thing you can do to the team that you're overmatching them physically. The worst thing that can happen is that you let them keep believing. Mm-hmm. And the longer they believe, the more dangerous they become. So start fast. And I think the way we got to do that is we got to take advantage of one-on-one matchups. If they're going to try to cover us man-to-man, that's just a tough chore. I know they got a phenomenal safety. They got a phenomenal lockdown corner. That's a matchup that I'm going to be excited to see if they want to try to man up. I'm going to be really excited to watch that. But be aggressive on first down as we have been. And I think a key to that is going to be, flipping the ball to our backs out of the backfield and letting those guys make plays. Instead of trying to pound the ball up the middle or even toss it off the edge from a run standpoint, give it the illusion of pass and flip the ball, swing screens, just little flat routes off of play action and kind of extend the run game, to get into those 2nd and 2 to 2nd and 3, 2nd and 4 situations.
That's awesome. Yeah. So Greg, do you have any follow-up questions to that one?
No, not really. Go ahead if you got one.
No, I was just going to say we haven't spent a whole lot of time on Ryan Day. I just want to get your quick thoughts on Coach Day and what he has brought. Obviously, he's had some struggles against the team up north, but I hate to say other than that, because that's the most important game on the schedule. But like you had said earlier, the next one's the most important. And a lot of these guys coming back, these 5th-year guys, these Jack Sawyers, that recruiting class of 2021, these guys don't get another game in an Ohio State uniform. So this next one, what is Coach Day saying to those guys before this game to get them amped up, or what's your thoughts on what he's preparing these days leading up to the game?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, obviously I don't know what Ryan Day is saying to these guys, but these guys haven't had this opportunity. And, that is that would be my message, regardless of what's happened, regardless of, you might be a senior that never beat Michigan. None of that matters. These guys haven't had that opportunity, and very few college football players ever get the opportunity that these guys have Monday night. And that is strap that uniform on for some, like you just mentioned, for one last time, to have a chance to be standing on top of the hill all by yourself when all the dust settles and the smoke clears and it's all over. And, however he I don't know how to communicate it. It's kind of be in the moment thing, but that would be my message. That would be my message of just, you have an opportunity that, when you were 8 years old, you dreamt of. You have an opportunity that there's only 200 guys in college football out of thousands that get this opportunity this year. And, the one thing about Ryan Day is players seem to love him. They seem to really play for him. When you do get behind the scenes videos and snippets, he's got some fire, he's got some passion, he gets them going. So there's no doubt in my mind he'll have them ready for this one. It's just going to be about execution.
And I guess I do have one more quick one, I guess, before we go to score predictions and let you go, because we do appreciate all the time you've taken. But the day of the game as a player. Now we didn't have a lot of night games in 2002. I think Northwestern was a night game. So I think night games in general are probably pretty tough on players, just like you got the whole day to kind of stew and think about this game. But a national championship game with the country watching and the media presence and everything, first of all, how do you sleep the night before? And then how do you just keep your emotions and your adrenaline in check as much as possible during the day to get your body to perform at the highest possible level at 7:30 p.m. On the biggest stage?
Yeah, I mean, the coaches will have a lot to do with that, right? So it'll be a relatively, moderately early wake up call. There won't be any, any chance for, too much sleep to create some lethargy among the guys physically, mentally, emotionally. So it'll be, a fairly decently 7:30, 8, maybe an 8 or 8:30 a.m. breakfast, probably some meetings, and then there is some downtime. And, some of the guys will handle that differently. Some teams will do a team walk, maybe lunch and then a team walk where it's just, hey, get out, move around. Don't be sitting in your hotel room all day. Every time you go to these places, the hotels have little hospitality rooms. There's probably going to be some meetings incorporated with some walkthrough stuff. It's just the biggest thing is just kind of make sure you're not just sitting around all day, laying in bed. For me, I know I I didn't turn the TV on any channel that was even going to remotely talk about college football that day. You know, if there was a movie on, if there was something else on, you know, maybe a little bit of TV and some downtime, but just, you know, it goes by quicker than you think. And they keep them, they'll keep them busy enough where they little snippets of focus on the game, but not all day long. And you know, and then, you know, 4 hours pregame is when the same routine kicks in. You're going to have the same routine, pregame meal, meetings, travel to the stadium. And then from there, every guy's routine is a little bit different until it's time to take the field and start warming up.
Very good. All right. Well, let's get you out here on one final question. You know, you mentioned the lead up to the game, but you know, when they get out on the field and that you know, that final you know, clock hits 0, what's the final score and who wins?
I like the Buckeyes. I do think I do think physically we're gonna just be too much, and I hope I'm right. I think it's going to be a little tighter than people think. I like 27-14, like a late score, maybe like a 1-score game. And then, you know, a fourth quarter score to kind of give a little breathing room.
Okay. All right. Very good. Very good.
But I would not at all be shocked if it's a multiple touchdown game. You know, yeah. I think there's some matchups that Notre Dame's going to have to prove to me that they can match it up and get the job done.
Yeah, I agree. I think our biggest strength in this game is our defense versus their offense. So I think Notre Dame's going to have a hard time putting points up on the board. But again, we shall see what, you know, Ryan Day and Marcus Freeman have cooked up for their teams. And, you know, players make plays in big games. So much like you and your teammates back in 2002. So, Craig, this was awesome. Real quick, tell everybody kind of what you're doing now. I know you got a son that's playing some high-level baseball too. So if you don't mind, for, you know, maybe give us a 30-second what's going on in the life of Craig Krenzel right now.
I'm living the good life. We're blessed, and you know, it starts at home with my family. My wife Beth, she's amazing. We have 4 kids. Our oldest is a freshman at the University of Tennessee playing baseball. Going to be trying to compete for some innings on the mound this spring. My daughter Ellie is a junior here in Dublin, and she is just the kind of, you know, she's my only daughter. So, you know, daddy's little girl, apple of my eye. She's absolutely amazing. 8th grader, Austin, 14 years old, football, basketball player. Really fun watching him go through the turning into a little dude. Kind of caught me off guard the first time with my oldest, but now I feel like I know what to expect. And just when you think you know what to expect and how it's all going to work, you know, God kind of changes it up on you and does a little differently, and just kind of watching him grow and mature is you know, remembering what he was like when he was one of the smaller guys on the team, Greg, right, playing with Coley, and, you know, now he's 5'10", and he's just really, really mature and really getting it, and it's just an absolute fun to watch. And then our youngest is 6th grader Colt. You know, one of us is probably going to end up in prison before it's all said and done. It's actually him. Colt, say hi. That's Colt right there.
Perfect timing right there.
Yeah, football, basketball, baseball. He, you know, he's awesome. He's, you know, he's the youngest of 4, and he knows more than your average 12-year-old should. And it's awesome because he's going to keep me young. He is. It's going to be an absolute blast. And you know, work-wise, I'm in the insurance business. Business partner and I got an insurance agency. We got an office in Dublin and an office in West Virginia. Small little custom niche construction company, and then try to play a little golf and snow ski when there's time.
Love it. Well,
and we alluded to it, but, you know, Craig did coach my youngest son Coley for 3 years. You youth baseball, and it was probably like, it's like the 3 best years of baseball, like in general, right? The years that you remember, 10 to 12, like when it's all fun, the BS.
And
really
we
has
had
its
it,
argument. Like,
and we had an awesome group. I mean, we had a great group of kids, great group of parents. We were actually just talking about it a little earlier. Beth and Austin and I mean, that Cooperstown trip was something that I will never forget. I mean, it was the absolute perfect ending to, for some of those kids, 5-6 years of coaching them. Yeah. So it was a lot of fun.
It's so rare these days too, with just everybody there's a lot of moving and shaking in youth sports and everybody's kind of moving around, that we were able to keep that group together. But yeah, it was some of the best years. And there's a bond between the kids, which will be cool because they're going to be, Coley's in high school.
1 year.
So you're entering high school. They're all going to be back together
1 year
again.
from all getting back together.
But the parents too, like anytime I'm around town and I see Craig or any of the other, it's like immediately, see somebody at a restaurant and immediately you reconnect. I mean, you realize that it's like, that travel sports becomes your family. They become your summer family. And we are blessed to have, Craig's leadership and everybody else on that team. So it was so much fun. And again, Craig, just thank you so much for taking all this time with us on a week that I'm sure you're getting pulled in a few different directions by, shows like us and media outlets and whatnot. This means a lot to us. It's great content and, really appreciate it.
No, my pleasure. My pleasure. It was a blast. Absolutely. I mean, I loved it. Had a great time. Thanks for the opportunity.
Well, we enjoy it, and we hope your score prediction rings true. And best wishes to you and your family, and living the dream in Columbus. And go Buckeyes. So, Craig, Greg, thank you so much, and we'll see you guys soon. And until then, hopefully Craig's prediction comes true. I know Greg and I are picking the Buckeyes as well on Monday. So go Bucks, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank you for listening to this show on Youngstown Studio. This is original Youngstown content. Feel free to share our videos and tell your friends about us. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on